You only see yourself.
But I can't see.
You can increase your bracket later. Why do you You're here.
Okay.
Madam Speaker, for far too long have we allowed minorities to be left out, to be discriminated by the policies and by people on the ground. For far too long we have allowed these industries to be handled by invisible hands, and we think we need to put a full stop to that. Why is it important? Ethnic minorities have been generationally discriminated in so many ways. And we think it boils down to them being economically unstable. We think if you are able to actually allow these people to be more empowered economically, a lot of things would be able to be garnered on the ground, and it would be illustrated in my speech. But most importantly, just to clarify, we are going to disproportionately distribute this, invest in this industries highly towards ethnic minorities. In status quo, what it looks like, service industries and blue-collar jobs are most likely the jobs that are available for these people, right? These are jobs like janitors and things like that, which is very disposable to people. So these people have to adhere to low wage gaps and to really terrible benefits, which we think is really, really wrong. Why is it really bad for them? Because they're usually disfranchised, right? Because these people usually get lower education, lower access to facilities, higher barrier of hiring, institutional discriminations towards them, and thus making them stuck in the poverty cycle. And with our policy, we are going to break that, right? So what are we going to do? Our mechanism is basically, firstly, jobs in the sectors are going to be more increased, right? We're going to pump in more money, invest more money towards different industries in these particular areas, right? Secondly, tax incentive for companies to be able to actually push forward more companies at that particular places, therefore creating more jobs. Thirdly, quotas for ethnic minorities to ensure that these people actually get a place in this place. And fourthly, based on the companies that we're going to incentivize is based on their economies. What this means is basically, usually these ethnic minorities have an inherent economy they carry forward two generations, like mining and so on. So we think we're going to incentivize this kind of economies more, right? Why is this really important? Because generally in the working force, there are skills that are being passed down from generations to generations, and we want to empower them. Secondly, we want to break this barrier of entry high, because these people, let's say black people, right? They don't get jobs at places that are flooded with white people because they are inherently more favored than them. But even in places that are predominantly black, these people still have to have a really high competition towards in their community itself. Therefore, it's not likely for them to actually have a job. So we think that's really, really bad, right? And also, these places usually have geographical affiliances, like Boston's with blue-collar jobs and factories and so on, right? So we think that's really important. But before I go on, yes.
Get clarification from your side. So currently, the ethnic minorities are predominantly in the low-value industry. Yes. So you want to invest in so that they continue to be in the low-value industry.
So we're going to do both, but we're going to have more companies that are actually catering towards their skills that they have on the ground, so that they don't feel too washed out. But we're also going to have other companies. They're still going to get the tax incentive and everything we talked about, right? But firstly, why is it principally justified? Firstly, we lower the wealth gap on our side, right? What this means is that because the lower wealth gap contributes towards the towards discrimination, we think we systematically take that out, because now these people are no longer in the low wealth gap category, and therefore less discrimination happen on the ground. So what we also do is take away places like slums and things like that. That's why it's really important for state to intervene. Also, it's really just state's duty to do it, right? But secondly, why is it the state's duty to intervene? Because, well, these people have been screwed up for really, really long time, and it has also been because of the systemic reasons and discriminations that has been happening that the state has always been turning a blind eye to. We think it's really important for state to do this as a form of reparation, and also help change the screwed up societal structure because of the categorical decisions government has made. It is really the time for the state to right the wrongs that they have been doing, and we can garner that with our policy. How is it that our policy actually uplift the minority, right? We are able to afford better lifestyle now because now they have more money, and they are able to actually build their social system better. How is that so? Because when you have more money to spend for change, therefore now you have more money to actually, you have more ability to pump in liquidity for betterment of the people as a whole in your community, right? I think it's really important. What this looks like is maybe better educational equipment, better music classes or things like that, right? We think this really empowers people on the ground, and we really need to do that on our side. But also, why is it we should do this specifically in these places? Because if you want to carry out these policies in places that are flooded with every race or every group of people, we think it's most likely that the majority group would harness the benefits, right? Let's say in a state where, like New York per se, it's more likely that white people are going to get more of these benefits, because people are at the ground right now. People are inherently would rather hire a white person because they are more likely to be approached and so on, right? We think that is against the purpose of the policy as a whole. But secondly, we enable barriers of acceptance that are extremely high to be lowered for these people. What this looks like is now, because they don't. Now Silicon Valleys will no longer only consist of white people and things like that, right? You allow these people to tap into this society as well. So we think that's really important, right? Also, we think it's really, really important to tap into this issue, because the arc of justice does not just bend towards you, you grab it. And on our side, we grab it.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Now I invite the leader of opposition.
We from side opposition believe that we from side opposition believe that you should not allocate investments on predominantly occupied by on industries that is predominantly occupied by ethnic minorities. We believe that from our side, the state should invest equally on that everyone should have be given equal opportunities and equal investments on terms, even if it's predominantly minorities or majorities in today's debate, ladies and gentlemen. But before that, let's move on to what side government has talked about in today's debate. First of all, let's look at what they talk about, how the ethnic minorities think in today's debate. They want to talk about how they wanted to give benefits in terms of giving allocations towards the predominantly ethnic minorities in terms of only the black people. The thing is, Black people are not the only minorities that's been living in America that they want to talk about in today's debate. There's Hispanic, there's Latinos, and in their sense, they only wanted to benefit the Blacks, in which is very unfair and unjust. So let's move on to what the Europeans they talk about. They talk about how when they wanted to allocate this money, they wanted to allocate more towards the industries in predominantly occupied by ethnic minorities. They talk about how they would power them economically. But in today's debate, we'll tell you there's two reactions to this. First of all, this is only an assertion. And second of all, how sure that this investment is going to benefit these Blacks at these minorities at the end of the day. This is because when you allocate like more money towards the Black people, that this money will like, trickle down to the minorities, this money will like more benefit trickle down towards the majorities and not the minorities at the end of the day, because the majority holds the more power and holds more influence in the industries, even though it's predominantly occupied by the people who are minorities at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. And let's talk about why is it not helping on even benefiting the people who are minorities. First of all, so what will tell you this is not going to be an unjust system, because we already allocated enough money towards those people. So when we fund more towards the minorities, it only leads to more corruption and only leads it's not going to value the minorities. And you didn't even provide an exclusive benefit to say that it is going to benefit the minorities at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Sit down. And they talk about how this is state duty to give more money and more funds towards industries in people who are minorities. But you cannot say that state duty. So saying that is even though you're going to say that it's a good investment on your side, in the best or worst case scenario, you're going to let these people live at the end of the day, live in a low value status, and it's not going to benefit either the minorities or either the majority at the end of the day. And that's like a very relatively no purpose system at all, ladies and gentlemen. But before that, yes.
Ma'am, at the beginning of your speech, you said that you want to distribute funds equally to all industries. But later on, you said that this industry that minority currently reside will be beneficial for them. Then why the hell are you still investing on your behalf?
The thing is that when you want to allocate more funds towards the minorities, it only lead to like a more harm, such as like more corruption. But rather than when you allocate a more equal funds towards both sides of the majorities and minorities, it's like providing a more allocation of money and allocate a more benefits to a society at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. So let's move on towards the argumentation of open opposition. We'll tell you that first of all, why I think it's like the state is doing enough in already providing an equal funding towards the minorities and the majorities industry at the end to begin with. So the first analysis we'll talk about on the state itself. So when you invest proportionally to industries, that is, it was like a normal thing to say that the state would invest their money on industries that has more profitable senses. So such as like agriculture and services and manufacturing. So why do you think the help is enough to begin with? It's like the investment that been allocating towards the investments that has been allocated towards the industries are already enough to help them to expand the industries and like booming and flourish their business to begin with. So for an example, in the sector of services, which is like majorly predominantly by the minorities, it's like the largest industries. But so if the government is like going to say that the industries if the government want to say that the industries, if the government wanted to say that the industries don't get enough money, so that's why we need to give them more money, it's like literally untrue, because in status quo, like, the sector that is predominantly occupied by the minorities already booming to begin with. So let's move on to the second one. We'll tell you that what does it mean when you disproportionately allocate these funds. So when you're allocating more funds towards the minorities in certain industries, and you put more resources, you put more funds, you like your main allocations are directly towards those kind of industries. So when you cut down allocations towards the majorities, when you wanted to put more on the minorities, it would actually lead to a more like the people who are in the majority sectors will actually feel like unhappy with this kind of situation, because like you're giving more attention towards the industries that predominantly occupied by ethnic minorities. But at the end of the day, it's not even going to help the minorities at all, ladies and gentlemen. So let's look at the reaction of the people in other industries. First of all, we'll tell you that the people who are in the other industries, when you've taken away their support structure, you've taken away the funds that should be allocated in them, but when you put them in their side of the world, it means that more likely these kind of people would retaliate. The majority itself would retaliate, and it will create a narrative in the sense that the minorities are helpless and you don't have enough power and you need the support of the system of a government. But at the end of the day, it will create the minorities will be seen as a stigmatization of they cannot be independent by themselves, and they need someone to help them. But at the end of the day, it's going to lead to it's going to be continuous towards the next decade, and how it creates a vulnerable state towards the minorities itself, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll tell you that how when you allocate disproportionate funds towards the minorities, it only leads to people the minorities themselves to not get caught on their own. I will believe that that's why you should side with that.
Alright, and we have
the very jobs that opening opposition wants to fight for are both predominantly majority white, but number two, extremely inaccessible for the average minority who has been disenfranchised to the point in which levels of education that they have to compare with white individuals are far inferior than that. I will argue to you two things. Number one, why do we not want to have some level of equal level of investment onto predominantly white or predominantly majority sectors? But number two, why do we think our work better helps? And lastly, right, even if trying to invest in Silicon Valley is that important, why do we think that the investments within these sectors are a prerequisite to achieving all the benefits in Silicon Valley? We will tell you why investing here creates more accessibility in Silicon Valley at the end of the day. But before that, two pieces of extraneous rebuttals. Number one, they told you the majority will become unhappy. So therefore, this means that in principle, you are also against affirmative actions in big corporations. This would necessarily mean that you are against having black quotas or quotas of women within corporations because it will piss off some white people. Number two, I will tell you, I do not care if they are pissed off. First point of contention, why do we think that we should not give them equally? So number one, let's just make this clear. It's not just about predominantly black, right? So we'll invest in Latinas and all that, no problem. So firstly, why do we think that we ought not to give them equal investment? Two reasons. Number one, because the ones which are the other side are oftentimes predominantly majority, where the jobs are oftentimes white-collar jobs, being in Silicon Valley, or even if it's middle-income white individuals, oftentimes have a lower barrier of entry when it comes to trying to create their own jobs, be their own producers, be startups. They oftentimes don't feel a level of discrimination that oftentimes black individuals oftentimes face. So this looks like, for example, a white startup or white individual who's trying to become a startup don't need to face sort of discrimination when trying to get to loans from banks. Oftentimes, because they have better credit ratings than black individuals, they are easier for them to get some form of loan from the bank. It's easier for them to start up, right? But number two, we think that even if these industries don't get funding, they would survive no problem. Because one, oftentimes Silicon Valley, literally Facebook, billions, you can see the amount of unicorns there. Number two, white people get loans and easier because black individuals are discriminated from the very past, oftentimes because they are put into different locations and all that. Credit ratings are bad for black individuals, and therefore it's harder for them to break the access of barrier when it comes to getting any form of good jobs, right? What is the conclusion to this? Number one, the kinds of jobs that the majority hold are oftentimes white people. Number two, oftentimes those jobs are very lucrative and powerful. And number three, the conclusion is that even if they do not get any form of funding, we think that they will still survive anyways. Second issue, why do we want to then help those who are in the minority, right? But I'll make more comparison onto big jobs, right? Firstly, is that for the big jobs in Silicon Valley or predominant white jobs, oftentimes there is a higher barrier of entry because oftentimes pre-existing biases within employers when it comes to trying to employ. Number two, often, for example, even women who want to go into corporations oftentimes like beyond the quota have to be considered whether or not they're going to have like some sort of pre-maternal leave and so on and so forth. So the barrier to entry is oftentimes higher. Number two, we will tell you that if you expand these these industries, the ones which will benefit the most are individuals of white, the ones which will benefit the most are white individuals. But number three, I will tell you that the minorities who are able to enter Silicon Valley, if they want to fund them equally, right, are only those who are from the minority but of the privileged minority. This means, like for example, your rich black individual and so on and so forth, and therefore the most lowest common denominator oftentimes who work in places like Detroit aren't able to access all of those benefits in their work. Therefore, we will tell you that number one, the benefits in our work often are larger in comparison in terms of the numbers of individuals who are able to access our benefits. This means that more individuals in our work are able to get those jobs in comparison to them, where only a slight amount of privileged minorities are able to access those large jobs. Number two, we will tell you that if it comes to the expense of those privileged individuals, we would prefer to expand our work, even if it means removing shrinking the access. Number two, why is our work more important? Because the industries that we are defending, one, are oftentimes at risk of automation. So because of the fast pace of how automation is working now, these individuals are oftentimes at risk of being disposed. Number two, these places are also oftentimes at risk of gentrification, because these are places where it's extremely far and corporations who want to plow up the land so that they can open up new land to create more industries there. And we think that that is bad in and of itself. And the last thing is, we will tell you that these industries would die out the moment in which you do not fund them aggressively. Because we will tell you, the pace in which we are able to save these industries when we aggressively fund them would never compare to any form of pace that they would try to create at the end of the day. But last argument, let's just assume Silicon Valley and all these jobs which are not predominantly minority are important, we will tell you that the infrastructure and the way in which we would benefit the people of these predominantly minority industries is a prerequisite to creating more jobs and accessibility in places like Silicon Valley. Why? Number one, it means that we create infrastructures when it comes to these places, So, for example, we're able to increase the amount of jobs and infrastructures within Detroit, more schools enter. What does it mean? It means that now the individuals within the predominant minorities are able to get some level of education, and this education is the equalizer. Number two, we will tell you, we break generational poverty. Because when you're able to opt out of that structures, for example, not getting some form of education, or not getting any jobs, for example, we're able to break those generational poverty. This means that it's easy for these individuals to get those degrees that are the prerequisite to enter Silicon Valley. But third, and the most important thing, the expansion of these industries within ethnic minority groups benefits people who higher class. So for example, it benefits those in Silicon Valley. How does it look like? It means that when there is more human capital and more ability to produce within these areas, when you're able to produce more in Detroit, it creates, so it's lucrative for Silicon Valley to expand when they know that they have the capital to expand, that they have the human resource to expand when these areas are expanded. The expansion of this means that now Silicon Valley, Facebook, Google needs more engineers. It means that it needs more technicians, more engineers, more IT individuals, more all those stuff, And therefore, it means that it trickles back to creating more accessibility, because now the expansion of Detroit expands the ability or expands the need for more black individuals who have the degrees that we have allowed them to get when we break them out of those generational poverty. At the end of the day, if you really want to help the minorities go and
Alright, thank you.
Madam Speaker, so the solution coming from side opening government is just simple things, right? They wanted to then disproportionately allocate more money to industries populated with ethnic minorities, but for the way they would do it is also to then take away money from the majority because they feel like the majorities do not need money because the white people have enough money, and why we think that extremely harmful for an alternative coming from your side, right? As a state, I don't think you should be taking that trade-off in the beginning, right? Because I think you should be catering equally to all the people on the ground, recognizing which industry should be getting more and so or not, right? So let's look at the case of side opening government. It was a bit weird, right? So they wanted to talk about how they pump more monies into industries or sectors like janitors and services, for that matter, right? Coming from Prime Minister. But I don't think this should be done in the beginning of the place. Just recognize, characterizing minorities, they're extremely at a disadvantage, right? Which also means they're they'll be easily exploited, they'll be easily manipulated, which also means they'll be taken advantage of by the majority. When you're investing into sectors like this, you have to recognize the person that is controlling the sectors are people coming from, no thank you, coming from the majority. Which also means that they'll be able to then control the cash flows or the investment that was allocated by the state in the beginning, right? Which also means, no thank you. It'll be less likely for them to then trickle down the money to the minorities because they know there's no possible way that the minorities would even acknowledge the fact they get more money, then which means that they'll be exploited right from the beginning when government allocate money to this kind of sectors. No thank you. Second thing, let's talk about how they want to talk there's a lower barrier of entry for Silicon Valley or something. To begin with a few things, right? The barrier of entry for Silicon Valley extremely high. It wouldn't be lowered, the bar wouldn't be lowered down just because you give disproportionate investment to industries like this, right? You have to tell us the structural analysis as to how investment equals opportunity or lower barrier of entry at the end of the day. No, thank you, Em. So I think this is not true. Third thing, so the only responses that we got regarding majority of being pissed off, and my LO have told you structural reasons why we think we should tap into the majority to be able to then help with the people on the ground. No, thank you. The only response coming from them. So what? We don't care about these people. These people are the main actors in this debate, right? They're the main stakeholders. Because for you to be able to change the narrative like you want it, you then have to be able to control the voices of the people on the top of the tier, right? Which is also the majority, which is also the conservatives in the United States of America, right? So when on your side of the house, you're doing nothing except entrenching the narrative that is people have. No, thank you, ma'am. Third thing, let's talk about how they wanted, let's talk about fast-speed evolvement, right? How everything's fast-paced, right? Everything's evolving at an extremely fast rate. So the solution for them to have this is let's pump in more money into agriculture because somehow automation would not take over agriculture. This is not true. The solution that we provide is why don't you provide better alternatives or welfare like education to these people? Because you cannot just pump in money into a sector that is already dying in hopes that automation wouldn't take over. It's not true lah. Globalization is happening. At the end of the day, agriculture wouldn't be there because everything will be robotized, right? So what we then provide to you as alternative, no thank you, is to then provide education or much more easier alternative. Let's go to my substantive. I have two questions before ranking that should be answered in this debate. Is first, is it strategic for the state to then invest more money into this industry? Second, let's look at the reaction of the people on the ground. They conveniently ignored from my LO speech, right? First thing, let's extend on my LO speech, right? What are the reactions of the people on the ground? My LO has given structural reasons, levels of analysis as to why we think the majority would retaliate and why this would be harmful for the minority on the ground. I'll take you in a minute, right? So what does this mean? It means that when you aggravate the majority, also means that the probability of the minority even benefiting would be lesser because I've told you that minority are at disadvantage, the lowest common denominator, right? It also means that the majority have all the power in the world to then have a hold over them, have all the power in the world to then take over them Just like that, just because the state give more allocations to them. And why we think this is not a strategic move coming from your side of the house, because these minorities, a narrative will be more entrenched just because you want to give this money, which also means that the narrative that minority is weak, minority wouldn't be able to stand on your own 2 feet. The government has to always give them welfare is not beneficial on your part, because how will this affect the mindset of the society? Now the society will also will always have this thing where they will look down upon the minority. Let's take it a step further. How will this affect the mindset of the people in the ethnic minorities itself? It means that now they will always be dependent on the government, and they will always be dependent on the government just because of the fact that they know governments will always provide them with this form of alternatives. I'll take closing.
Ma'am, so government on your side is perfectly fine by letting industries die because the amount of funding given is not enough. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that, right? Because you have to acknowledge the fact globalization is happening. Whether you want it or not, agriculture will at the end of the day be populated with robots lah. So that means we transfer them to other sectors. That's my alternatives, guys. I think it is good enough as an alternative, right? Second, why is it then not strategic for the government, right? Because I think it's not strategic, because coming from side opening government, they want to talk about how we are okay with investing more because we don't want some sectors to die. Why is this not strategic? Because at the end of the day, the government will only be pumping money into industries that are going to die at the end of the day, which means that this money or allocations that could have been given to better sectors like technology or services would then be waste or being drained down just because you want to save a dying sector. And why we think this is not strategic. This form of allocation should be given to industries that they know will be able to then handle the globalization of the world, right? Because at the end of the day, it is not at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money you have, right? It matters who you give this money to and how you use this money. Proud to oppose. Thank you.
We think it was fairly insensitive for Azalia to tell us that at the end of the day, these industries were not worth it and these industries should die out. We think that at the point in which that you even have an alternative to transfer these individuals to other industries, they'll always be in low-scale jobs. They'll never be able to be at the top rank or even have the opportunity to penetrate the market that you wanted. You will always be in a position of failure and you will always be in a position of not getting anything. We think we're going to differ from OG. OG's benefits are contingent upon these industries particularly flourishing. But we think that survivability is enough of a net benefit, and if we can prove this from closing government, we win this debate. In my speech, I'll be talking about a few extensions. Firstly, I'll be talking about how our sites create a sustainable development and distribution of wealth towards these particular minority industries. Secondly, I'll be talking about how do minorities industry functions and how do we change that. Thirdly, I'll be talking about how states also have a moral incentive to protect them due to the fact that these industries, like even if minority industries could survive in their world, they will always be commodified at the end of the day. First, let's talk about these, like engaging in creating a sustainable development and distribution of wealth. So already from opening, like they talked about in terms of, okay, no, we'll engage in this. Like we have more distribution of wealth right now towards minorities. States want economic development rapidly, right? States try to diversify the workforce to give more quotas to GLCs and things, right? Why is this not enough? Firstly, in terms of sustainability, you ask individuals to leave industries that are generational. These are industries that are tied down to their culture and religion and things that are extremely important in today's debate that the state needs to protect. Why? No, thank you. Why is there a lack of an ability for these industries to flourish in the first place? First reason is because these industries don't have the ability to penetrate to international markets. How do a lot of white industries work right now? The fact that they can survive in the first place is because they have a lot of like foreign direct investments coming in through the market of international relations. We think that that isn't accessible towards your minorities, right? Second structural reason is in terms of people not having the ability to politically lobby
lobby. It's like due to the fact that they're minorities, their voice and their position in the social ladder, they never have the ability to do so. Thirdly, they also do not have the ability to have state arsenal, right? And minorities in these particular industries, for example, during the collapse of the bank industry in America, in years and years, the state chose to eventually build back up that bank in order to support this majority industry, which will never happen which will always happen in their world at the point in which they always support the major industry, right? So the point is, you need to aggressively distribute these particular this money and this funding towards these in order for them to get the benefits. When you flip this and you invest disproportionately, you also get those benefits in terms of distribution, in terms of international relations, and in terms of foreign direct investment, right? Also, let's engage in this idea of state responsibility, because the state's responsibility is to inevitably protect these individuals due to the fact of their identity, right? So a lot of the times, individuals in status quo, especially minorities, lose their identity at the point in which they even enter the workforce in the first place. Even if they were to be able to enter those GLCs that you so wanted them to, at the end of the day, they'll always be in low-scale positions, never being able to move forward from there, right? So that form of social mobility or economic mobility will never be able to be at the best. But secondly, in terms of second extension, but how do minority industries work and how can we change that? Firstly, a lot of minority industries are working in horrible working conditions, right? They make money in the easiest way possible. This also means like coming to extents of polluting the environment, or at the end of the day, never being able to help individuals, right? So like states, other than protecting their religious identity and culture and being okay with the fact that like minorities want to stay in that particular industry, we also think that states should always invest in preventing in terms of like climate change and things like that. So meaning that when states aggressively invest in minority industries, also gives them the opportunity for better working conditions, better welfare, better healthcare, better technology, right? These are exclusive benefits that you don't get under your side. Also minus the fact that these industries in your world will die. And at the end of the day, you transferring them to different industries will always make them be placed in a low scale position. But also in terms of the extension of like companies always going to commodify these minority industries. Because understand this, most of the time, a lot of individuals in status quo, minority industries like agriculture or like minorities that work on crafts work, for example, will always be able to flourish at the point in which that it like commodifies it, commercializes things like dream catchers, or like at the end of the day, making it a lot easier for them to succeed. So meaning that their identity, not only is their economic ability taken away, but also their identity as well, because it's at the hands of white people, right? So like the conclusion is this: you will always be secondary to a white person. You have an unsustainable development model which will exist under our side of the house exclusively from CG, but also the fact that your survivability isn't enough of a net benefit for you to exist as an industry. We think it's frankly insulting that opening opposition didn't want to engage with that, right? But also, let's also engage more in opening opposition in terms of minority industries not being beneficial at all. We think that it's not the same. Like the even playing field from like leaders up was not true at all. Some industries cost more than others. And even if there is an existing playing field that is quite equal, companies are racist in nature, right? They hire you less despite the quotas. And they get away with it by saying, like, don't blatantly say, I'm not gonna hire you because you're black. They say, oh, I'm not gonna hire you because you don't have enough, like, education for us, or you don't have enough qualifications in comparison to another white person who may as well have the same job, right? We think that you have to answer whether or not you're okay with these particular industries dying or being at the hands of white people, right? Because the funding that you give right now will never be enough to sustain these particular individuals. It's 6 anything. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so at the end of the day, you making like majorities being angry is perfectly fine in our world as long as they're enough to survive, right? We think that at the end of the day, if you make it really horrible to, like for these minority industries to continuously flounder, you never have the ability for them to make things a lot better, right? At the end of the day, if you have a sustainable development model, like other than just distribution of wealth and giving more quotas, you make it a lot more meaningful for the job that they're doing, right? And also, you don't discourage them from entering the industry that they want to enter because of the generations of it being developed. So now you don't force people to alternatives that they don't want to go to. You allow them to flourish in a ability in the industry that they want, and also champion that industry as opposed to saying that industry never had the opportunity to exist in the first place and never had the potential. All those potentials were privileged and all those potentials were given to you by the government. I think that the government needs to give minority industries that opportunity and that privilege.
Oh shit.
Sorry, people back home, you have to wait for a while. Still live stream.
Yeah.
Keep up the next one.
Yeah. Are you not okay?
Angkat betul tadi kita tak nak buka balik kan? Saya kau cakap pedas. Hajar ini like that lah.
Duduk sini.
Why they say nicer than you?
How old are you guys?
I'm 24, the other one is 23.
You 24?
Yeah.
Kau 21 kan? Sama siapa kan?
20.
20.
Yeah.
I don't like you for 24.
You're this age?
Yeah, I don't look like I'm 24.
You look 22.
Thank you.
Why do you nicer than them? Is it like after you graduate and just
Yeah, you just say that.
Saya boleh sekolah lagi.
my God is important.
Macam orang
Right.
Okay, cool. You might remember our opposition. Okay.
Mana dia kita? Do you want to continue or do you want to wait for her?
Like I want to continue, but like
She's not asked you anything, right?
So,
she hasn't given consent. She hasn't given
so I'm
consent.
gonna wait for no, yeah.
Maybe we should
Your comments.
If everyone is a good, we want to move on.
Okay. Right, sure. Let me see. Okay.
Okay.
So here's how closing opposition sees debate. This debate is about what is the best way we want to bring ethnic minorities out from poverty. So government is saying that they want to invest in industries which are already in low of value, for example, like agriculture. And somehow by investing more into this low value industry, which are inherently, you can't improve it anymore because the high value industries are always the banking and services sector. So how does by investing more in low value industries such as agriculture, you kind of like reinforce their position to remain in agriculture. This is what our forefathers in Malaysia, at least in Toko Rahman. So they want to separate, industries not identified, not tied to by their race or religion. So basically, what the government is doing is sort of like reinforce this situation. And secondly, they said that somehow, if you still continue to invest in these low value industries, somehow they can catch up to the level of banking, the efficiency of the banking industry. We think this is a very, very, a pointless effort because as the opening opposition already said, with moving globalization, there's no point of fighting it. The industries that are growing right now is digital, banking, those kind of sectors which we admit are currently dominated by the majority of ethnic. So the real good of the issue is how do we improve the access of these minorities into the high value industries, not to further aggravate the situation by continuing to invest in industries which are already low in value in the first place. So that's our problem with side opening government. So side closing government is saying that we're still gonna invest in these minority sectors. We feel because we want to preserve their culture, it's their choice. See, we should support it. for us, this is all more reason why we should fund all sectors equally. Because state cannot fund choices of individuals. They want to remain in agriculture because of their culture, because of their personal reasons. They want to remain in agriculture. We as a state, we want to help improve their situation by moving them out from agriculture into a higher value sector. And they say that there is still value in agriculture sector. Then we, as a closing opposition, we argue to you, for the long term, you can just hold on as much as you can. You give value as much as you want to fishery, for example. How much you can invest in the fishery sector to be able to match up into a DG sector? You just simply can't see the logic in that. So before I move on to my points, I'll take closing opposition.
Sir, you say that you want to distribute money equally to all industries. By the same breath, you say that you want these people to move out of their current industry. Pick one. What's the point of investing?
So what we are arguing is that you need to argue this in a principled manner. So we don't think by investing in industries, particularly where there are ethnic minorities, is the right way to go. There are a lot of other policies that we haven't tried, such as anti-discrimination laws, incentives for companies that actually promote diversity, a balanced gender diversity, for example. Those kind of policies that we feel that will improve access of minorities into the high value sector. Because we acknowledge the fact, the problem right now, for example, the government is saying that we don't have enough women directors on companies, for example. So this is the kind of policy that we can implement for minorities. For example, a company that achieves a balanced, diverse composition receive government incentives. This is the way we feel that closing opposition's point is to say the root of the problem is how to improve access of the minorities into the high value sectors such as banking and also digital. So our point basically coming from opposition is to point out what are the dangerous flaws that will come from their proposal, right? Firstly, they're saying that they need to understand that what kind of danger that this policy will bring. Firstly, they need to acknowledge the fact that what is the role of the state? What are the processes they need to follow when they invest in a particular industry? They need to make sure that when they invest in a particular industry, it has to be the most efficient industry. Why? Because when the industry is the most efficient, it gives more economic growth and you have more revenue for the government. So when the government gets more revenue, then they can use this revenue to build schools and also to improve the social condition lives of those in the minority places. So we are also coming from the angle that it's not by investing in industries that are from minority. We should invest in infrastructure such as schools and hospitals for those of minority background, so that they can achieve an equal level playing opportunity in the digital sector. But here's the thing: the opening government is saying that, oh look, that the majority sectors, they have unequal playing field. They are discriminating against the minorities. That is why we're saying we are not trying other efforts such as anti-discrimination laws, and also because we feel that there's no economic reason why they want to discriminate in the first place. For example, if I'm a company, if I see that you are good, then definitely there's no economic reason that I wouldn't hire you. We think that what the government should do is to promote understanding to this company. For example, there are governments in UK, they fund institutions to carry out research, to produce research that suggests that companies, if you hire more balanced individuals, you will get a higher return. This is the kind of thing that the government should promote, not by actually selecting winners of particular industries. So again, to my point on what is the role of the state when it comes to investing in industries. First, it has to be efficient, and secondly, by not following this principle, which is to invest in industries based on their ethnics, this open rooms to, for example, corruption and and also there's no guarantee for you to be able to continue this benefit to the bottom, right? Because the concept of, for example, the trickle down effect, because you're gonna only benefit a certain elite of the minority, and it couldn't because it's simply because what has happened in Malaysia, for example, when governments are selecting a particular industry, they use the minority as a reason, but actually they are funding a particular elite group coming from that minority itself, so it doesn't trickle down to the actual people. So those are the things that we feel are dangerous for our country. Thank you.
Madam Chair, for far too long, we allow minority industries to be at the mercy of the tyranny of majority. It is extremely unfair for us to allow status quo to continuously and pretentiously hurt minorities, and this has few reasons why. On the first level, I will tell you effectively why it is extremely important for us to ensure the survivability of minority industries. Secondly, I will tell you why we shouldn't allow minority industries to be at the mercy of appropriation from the majority in order for them to survive, and why state must intervene and help them for them to independently survive. And third of all, why net environmental benefit means that particular industry and the working environment itself will improve. Unique extension coming from only closing government, which was not engaged at all by the other side. Let's go to the first. Let's first set up this debate in terms of what closing government wants from this debate. Number one, closing government was the only side in this debate who believed that the end goal that we plan to achieve is to ensure survivability of this particular industry, and why is it important to protect. While opposition clearly come here and say we're perfectly fine with this particular industry dying out. And I'm going to enumerate even more and even further in regards to why is it harmful for us to let this particular industry to die out. First issue, why is it extremely important for us to create a sustainable distribution of wealth? Side opposition, you posit the idea that we should continuously give out welfare in terms of education and in terms of funding money towards this minority in general. Side closing government uniquely presented to you that why some people who are within this industry would not even move out, even though they are highly educated, for several reasons. A, we will tell you, most of them are generationally and culturally tied to that particular industry in terms of creation of handicraft, as well as creation of country music and so on. So it's extremely hard for them to move away. Therefore, some form of support needed to be given to that particular industry at the end of the day. Sit down. But second of all, we also think that the reason why minority choose not to move out from the current industry is because of the racist culture within the majority industry to begin with, where they automatically exclude them and only keep them within the lower bar of society. The only way for them to go up the ladder is through by affirmative action that sometimes even company corrupt and company use it to their own advantage, and just put token figures without giving them actual power or actual exposure at the end of the day. This is something that we are unable to systematically change. Therefore, this leads to my second issue in regards to why it is the state's moral responsibility to protect cultures from being appropriated. Under status quo, the only way of how the selling of boomerangs or handicraft can move forward is when white people enter the framework and we will invest and we will sell it using our own individual figures. We think that's extremely discriminatory in nature, where you only allow a minority industry to flourish when white people become the figurehead. Side closing government uniquely changes that particular dynamic when state disproportionately invest in that particular minority industry, giving them the former leverage that they have for generations been deprived of. And it's a unique benefit that you only get from our side. What are the unique benefits that we've presented from you, which was not engaged at all by them? Number one, we prevent the idea of appropriation of culture by another race in general. Second of all, we allow minority to preserve their culture. as I presented earlier, like why they don't want to move out from that particular culture in the first place. Because this debate is not only simply about agriculture in general, it's also about people living in handicraft and like those Aborigine people in general. Those were not engaged at all in this debate, and we think there's a lacking part before that.
What if it's my culture and my personal choice to remain in the banking industry? So why can't I get, assistance for that particular choice if you say that you should protect culture?
Right, now, my speaker have already presented in regards to like why other industry under status quo can already sustain themselves independently. But if you're not clear yet, we'll tell you, this other industry, as you mentioned, are highly potential, which means foreign direct investment also have an incentive to invest in that particular sector. We also think rich philanthropists themselves also have an incentive to invest in this particular industry independently without government intervention. The comparison here is these minority industries don't have the same amount of influx of money coming into that, and that's why on the comparative, we think that that's why state need to intervene. The conclusion of my argument is state have always had to protect the interests of minority, especially when they can't fend off for themselves, they can't defend by themselves. State should have the lowest common denominator. They fail to do so. On the third level, like why in terms of corruption and so on will be much worse if you go along the line of side opposition. Because this debate becomes a weird one where like slingshot has been tossed around in regards to saying that corruption would happen if government goes through with their policy. We think it's highly unlikely because when state interference happens, you have to be more accountable in regards to how you carry out your particular industry, which means the chief currently within a particular tribe will take the profit all to himself in comparative status quo, where he will take profit when he sells all of his merchandises and handicraft towards the white people who will later sell it back to the town. We ensure accountability on our side in comparison. Fourth idea, like how do we get net environmental benefit in terms of improving working conditions? We want to posit to you that under status quo, due to low investment from government, minority, who are also poor people, work in extreme harsh conditions. Either they be underpaid or either they're working in unsafe working environment that is either heavy in pollutants or the exposure to dangerous chemicals around them. Heavy investment within government also means two things. Number one, improve in technology as well as creating a safety working environment, because government need to adhere and have to be accountable in terms of their investment. It means in the long term, poor minorities working in that particular industry is able to get net benefit of a safer working environment, and that's only existence and mutually exclusive on our side when you place a large number of money. Equal distribution of funding, it is not enough, because these industries are already disproportionately being bullied for years and years, and we think only through our policy we're able to change the dichotomy and tyranny of majority wood side government. Thank you.
So I think at the end of the day, it's just matter what you want, because I think that instead of the government don't really set what they want. At the end of the day, they want so many things. They want to help the minorities. They want to help the industries. But can you do both things at the same time? And with what they're proposing, would it be achieved if it's based on what they're saying? So there are three main issues that will be addressed here. Is first, if the side, what is the side of the government, what are doing, is it really actually solving the problem of discrimination in the minorities, or actually is promoting even more discrimination? The second thing is, are they actually helping in the industries? for you to focus on this, you won't say dying, yeah, sort of maybe dying industries, and you because they themselves concede that these industries are dying, and you want to help them. But is it what I mean? Why are you doing it for? Are you actually helping the industry? Are you actually helping these people? Because if you want to talk about helping the industry, they fail to show that how will you affect the industry in a larger scale if you take all this money and all this money from the majority, and you take all this money from you channel some money from the major industries and channel those money to this dying, or so-called maybe closely to die industries. And the third thing is, I would like to, also to argue the idea of the responsibility of the state, which the closing side really emphasized on, where the state really need to intervene, but actually when the state needs to intervene, when actually where they argue that it's the state's responsibility to take care of the society, but actually there are more to that, because when the state favors the minorities, they have to also think about the majorities as well. So let's go to the first idea, which is solving the discrimination of minorities. So what the side of the government talked about, firstly, is that they bring up this whole status quo that these minorities have industrial discrimination and unequal chances. And they think that by investing in this, all this predominantly minorities industries, it would solve this problem. We think no, because why? How are you going to do that? Because they talked about like they want to bring these industries out into the Silicon Valley or something. But at the end of the day, you're still keeping all these industries. There's still a division of industries here and there. There's still an industry where it's full of minorities, and you're still keeping the major industries which are full of majorities there. I mean, we don't see the problem of where you bringing these minorities out from these industries, and you are helping them to break through that barrier for them to enter these major industries. This is what we don't see from the side of the government. Instead, you're embracing those dying industries and you're keeping them there, hoping for them necessarily go out on their own, where you're not promoting for them, you're not promoting them to actually improve themselves. Because the idea of what makes you break through into the major industries, it's not only about racial ideas or maybe what race are, but it's actually more to performance. So we think that at the side of the opposition, we think rather than you channeling money into some industries or whatnot, we think that's why we think it's better for you to use that money even more properly and even more smarter to put in this for social needs and whatnot. Any one of you.
So the jobs in your banking and digital world are only limited as so far as much as they can create. For those who don't have those degrees, where do they get their jobs from?
And that's why we, as a side of our mission, we propose rather than you put all those money in investing in industries, why not into these minorities, their own social needs? Because we think that is what we need to improve. This is what the problem of these minorities, if you're talking so much that they are not getting educated, their education is really bad. So this is where we should put our money into, to help them and also to promote them to be better for themselves. So and the idea is that we think that if by doing that you will create more discrimination to the minorities, because when you affect these majorities, when these majorities see that the state is favoring the minorities, how will they look into the minorities themselves? They will it's not that they're even working together. All of them are working in different industries, and they're not helping any piece or anything, and they're just gonna hate each other. Sit down. So the second issue is about helping the industries. What the side of the government don't understand is that they want to talk about, it comes back to what you actually want. If you want to help the industries, make sure you help the industries in a smarter way. Because they think that this can help the industries, but they tend to forget that the idea why people invest in industries, because in the end of the day, you will have a big return to that. So what they fail to show is that why do you invest in these industries, later on the profit will be there, because they fail to show in that case. Because if you're talking economically, we don't see that idea at all. We think it's actually even bad, because you're ruining all the cash flow of the state, where the state could actually flow the money to more major industries or somewhere more important. Anyway, maybe I'm not saying waste time or something, it's a good thing, but is it a smart thing to do? So we think no, we think that for us, at the side of the opposition, we are not saying that we are discriminating all these industries, we don't simply care about them. We think that we, from the start, we stress that we should equally divide our funds or anything to every single industry and not not to favor anything based on anything. So the last idea is about the state. The closing opposition talk about the state is the state responsibility to intervene, but the idea of the state intervening, yes, I do agree. Of course, it's the state's responsibility to take care of the society, of the citizens, and whatnot. But how again it comes back to the matter that what if the state is doing is actually affecting the majority? Because I mean, the state, how would the majority feel if the state is actually favoring the minority? How bad will that be? I mean, we have so many other things, so many other parties that can actually help the minority, but we think at this stage of this debate that why does the state, in the end of the day, which they fail to analyze, they fail to prove why the state is doing the state is doing this is justified. It is okay for the state to some sort put some favor in the minorities without actually affecting the majorities and actually affecting, because when you affect the majorities, you will actually affect the minorities back, because majorities, everything the majorities feel, the majorities will always amplify it back to the minorities. So at the end of the day, we don't see what government is doing, we don't see what is it for, and even if they talk about what they're doing for, we don't think it will be a success in every single angle. Talking about industries, talking about distribution, and we think if we treat them equally and everything or whatnot, we think that's even much better and for us to solve the root of the problem, which is maybe help these minorities for their social needs. Okay.
Yeah.